Hello, everyone. I thought it'd be nice to do a recorded lesson where you can just hear me ramble on for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, not very long, instead of me just sending through a PowerPoint for you to go through. And today what we're going to look at is the transport systems in plants. So as part of this organisation topic, I should say there's only 2 lessons left of this organisation topic, which is the reason that we haven't moved on to the ecology work that everyone else is doing. We have, just like we have blood vessels, plants have their own type of vessel, and they're just called the transport system, called the xylem and the phloem that you can see on this slide here. So today we're going to look at what the xylem is, what the phloem is, how they're adapted for their function, and also sort of what they look like. Keywords you're going to be hearing a lot of are translocation, transpiration, xylem, and phloem. Now, next lesson is about transpiration. You can see here, that's next lesson, which is going to be next week. Okay, so period 5's lesson is going to be a little quiz on show my homework for you to do, just a multiple choice thing. Transpiration will be the week on Mondays lesson that we have. So, or not the week on Mondays lesson, you know what I mean, because it's Easter. So let's jump into it. Plants like us need a transport system. They need something to help transport oxygen, minerals, carbon dioxide, glucose, everything around the plant. And that is because they are multicellular. Okay, that means they have more than one cell. And if they have more than one cell, diffusion isn't good enough by itself. Okay, you can't just rely on diffusion. Diffusion only works if it's a single cell organism, like an amoeba, or something really, really tiny. Okay, because it's multicellular. Because it's multicellular, things need to be transported mainly from the roots or from the leaf around the plant. Okay, a very big organism means that you have a very small surface area to volume ratio. So diffusion isn't good enough. Now, the first part of this is just looking at what gets transported. So, irrespective of how it gets transported, we know that plants exchange and transport carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, glucose, and mineral ions. And what I want you to do in a second is just pause the video, just spend 5 minutes, less than that, researching why a plant needs to exchange and transport this thing. Where does it come from, or where does it go? So, for example, carbon dioxide is, I can write, needed for photosynthesis. Needed this released from Okay, carbon dioxide has those 2 things. What I want you to look at is how does a plant use oxygen? How does a plant use water? How does a plant use glucose? How does a plant use mineral ions? So just pause this video, go on to Google, type how does a plant use oxygen, water, glucose, mineral ions. Just write a couple of sentences, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points in your book. You could put the title as transport systems in plants. Okay, so put the title as transport systems in plants, and I would like you to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points. Meant to be a 5 bullet points, and just a little dash next to it saying what it's used for, what's it needed, what's it released from, that kind of stuff. Okay, so pause the video now. Bro, so what we've already talked about carbon dioxide. That one's done. Okay, it's needed for photosynthesis. It's released from respiration. Now, oxygen is the opposite. Okay, so oxygen is completely the opposite to carbon dioxide. Okay, it's, let me change the color. It's needed. Don't know why it's done that. It's a highlighter, that's why. Needed for respiration. Released from photosynthesis. Okay. Water is the same as carbon dioxide, so that's there. And oxygen, glucose is the same as oxygen. Let me just do those like that. Yeah. So shall we? Let's do glucose and, oh, I'm not very good at this, am I? Glucose and oxygen is this one, so needed for respiration, release from photosynthesis. Then green, maybe? Carbon dioxide and water needed for photosynthesis, released from respiration. So that's the best way I can think of showing you that. Let's erase. Okay, so we've got carbon dioxide and water are the same. Oxygen, glucose is the same. Needed for respiration, released from photosynthesis. Now, mineral ions are used for growth. Again, growth mainly. I think we'll just leave it at growth. If you've got extra bits for that one, then fantastic. I'm going to leave it at just for growing. Okay. Now, there is this link here that I'll also put on Show My Homework. It's like a short 2 or 3 minute video with David Attenborough talking about how plants transport water and sort of what goes into it and how much sort of power is actually required. If you think of a massive tree, the example he's got is like a 100-foot oak tree. The pressure that you need to get for that water to get from the roots all the way up to the top of the tree is incredible. But trees can do it without any energy. So it doesn't need any energy to move it. Okay, we'll look in more detail about it next lesson. What I want you to do for now, pause the video for it again, go on to Show My Homework and click this link. Okay, so you talk very, very quickly about what the xylem is and what the thing. So the xylem is there, and you can write this down in your book underneath that first point. There's 5 bullet points. The xylem is to transport water and solutes, and solutes just means like ions and minerals and things like that. The phloem is there to transport food. I'm going to think, what is food that the plant wants? Well, mainly, the food is glucose from photosynthesis. Okay, so the xylem is for water, the phloem is for food. Xylem is for water, phloem is for food. So phloem food is quite simple to remember, isn't it? You can remember that one as a little rhyme. Phloem food. Okay. Starting with the xylem, though, it's already said it's involved in the movement of water and minerals. Okay, but mainly water. We'll just stick with water. And water comes from the soil into the stem that the xylem is. And there's not just one xylem. Generally, there's lots of xylem. So if you accidentally break a xylem, we've still got lots of xylem around to help transport the water to the top of the plants, to the leaves where it's needed. Okay. Some features of the xylem that we need to know are at the side there. So there is one way only. So it can only go from roots to leaves. It's the only way that water can travel in the xylem. It has to go from the roots to the leaves. It can't get the other way. Okay. We already know that it transports water and minerals. What we don't know is this is actually one big tube, like a long straw, that have no sort of ends between the cells. All the cells sort of merge into one straw-like transport system. Okay, and these cells are very, very thick. They're made of something called lignin. Okay, and that works as like a spiral. If you imagine all the cells are in a spiral form, all the way up a bit like a straw, so that the water can move up. Next lesson, we're going to look at what happens to water when it gets to the leaves, which is transpiration. But for now, we don't need to know that. Okay, we just need to know that water moves up the xylem one way only. There's no end walls, so it's just one long tube, and it's a very, very strong structure made of lignin. If we apply that, this is a rose. Other things are transported in the xylem. So it's not just water, it's also minerals, and it can be a dye. So if you take a plant and you put it into some water that has some food dye, what you'll find is as that water is drawn up the stem, it colours the leaves on the other end. You see it a lot with celery. If you put celery into food dye, even though it's cut and it's dead, water still moves through transpiration because water's still lost, because no energy is needed. It doesn't matter if it's alive or dead, it will still happen. So here we've got all the different coloured petals, because we've got different coloured solutions and different dyes that's in the water that we can't see down the bottom. And that dye has moved up the stem and into the petals. So we've got all these lovely different colours. You can probably see these different colours if you see plants for sale at like Morrison's or something. Generally, they have something like this where they colour it. They also like to colour heather. You can get like orange coloured heather and green and blues and yellows. You know, heather shouldn't be that colour, but you can put a little bit of food dye into the water that you give it, and it will change colour. The phloem is a little bit different. Now, we don't need to know much about the phloem, we just need to know about the structure of it, okay? It's to do with something called translocation, but again, don't really need to know the ins and outs of it. We just need to know translocation is the movement of food, okay? The main important features, there are only 3 features. Okay? The first one is that we have this food that's transported. It isn't just water. The second one is that instead of having what the xylem has, which is just one long tube, we've got walls in between each cell that have perforations. So that just means holes. So perforations just mean holes. So all here, we've got holes in between the cells to allow the cells to move. Okay, allows the water to move. And the third feature, the xylem only goes from the roots to the leaves. The phloem can go both ways. Okay, it can go both ways because if we imagine this is the phloem, and then further up we've got some kind of leaf here. And that glucose has to travel down to the roots where it's stored. So there has to be this two-way system with the phloem. Okay, so our 2 differences, the xylem, in fact, I think I've got a page here. There we go. The xylem is one way. So let me do my xylem in blue for the water. Xylem, we have water from the soil, move into the roots, and then travel up just one way, travel into the leaves, and then out into the air. The phloem, let's do the phloem as green. The phloem, yes, transports water up and out, but also can take some glucose, transport that down into the roots as well. So that's 2-way. and the xylem is one way. Okay, so the main part for this lesson really is for you to have written down at the very start the materials and what they're needed for, what they're used for, where they're released from. So there's just 5 bullet points underneath the title. So hopefully you've already done that. Okay. You can, if you want to, find some nice diagrams online and maybe copy this down with the 4 points. In fact, just do that one. Include that bit at the side as well. So you can pause the video now, really, if you wanted to copy that down into your book in a nice sketch. The same for the phloem. I want to pop that one down as well. So the bit that I've just circled. And then lastly, it's using all this information, this comparison between the xylem and the phloem, to sort out all of these boxes into whether they're for a xylem or whether they're to do with the phloem. Okay, so you could just write them in your book. You could do two lists. You could do 2 paragraphs. You could draw a table in your book if you want to be extra neat. Sort these into xylem and phloem. So if we were to do a few together, xylem was blue, wasn't it? So carries glucose to growing parts and storage organs. Now, carries glucose. I know the xylem is only there to carry water and mineral ions, so it can't carry glucose. So this one has to be, if I get a highlighter, this one has to be phloem. This one has to be phloem. And the second one carries water and, well, I don't even need to go any further, do I? Water and mineral ions. I know for a fact that that is the xylem. So I've got my first 2. Okay, I would use a BBC bite-size revision page for xylem and phloem to make sure that you can answer all of the rest of them. So cell wall made of lignin, it's permeable, thick cell wall, thin cell wall, flow is upward, flow is up and down. Most of these you'll be able to do from what I've said and from what you've seen from the PowerPoint. Some of them you won't be able to. For example, I didn't mention that the xylem is made up of dead cells. I did not mention that at all. Okay, but it will be on revision sites. It will be there for your own research. There are things that I've missed out on. So you can just spend a few minutes just to read around the xylem and the phloem. There are other bits that I've missed out because it's their next lesson, really. But it's for you to have a quick look before our next lesson, which will be after Easter. Okay. I've done those first 2 for each column for you. So the xylem, it carries water and minerals and is made of dead cells. The phloem carries glucose and is made of living cells. The rest of them I can leave you to do. And I'm going to click to the next slide for the answers in the next 5 seconds. So pause the video and then play it once you need the answers. There we go. There's the answers for xylem and phloem. So we already had in there the carries water and they're made of dead cells. We already had carries glucose and made of living cells in the phloem. So the rest of them you should have, and I want you to give it ticks or crosses or put some arrows between if you need to swap some round. If you got 2 wrong, just swap them round like that. That's absolutely fine. Excellent. Okay. Period 5's lesson today, which you'll probably already see on Show My Homework because I've set it the day before, is a quick sort of multiple choice quiz on transporting plants, the things that you've done. I might include a few bonus questions that apply to the transporting animals, your blood composition, your arteries, veins, and capillaries. The heart, I might also include a question on the heart. It's only going to be about 10 or 15 questions. I want to answer all the questions, see how well you do. Okay. Please message if you have any questions whatsoever, if you need any help. I'm looking forward to seeing what you get on your quiz.